Thank you all so much for joining us here on this beautiful Thursday afternoon. The second to last dinner of the day. Here we've got G. Brian Jook. He's going to make us a beautiful piece. Helping him is George Kennard. I'm next to him. My name is Katie. I'll narrate this process for you. So if you have any questions at all, please let me know. But we're very happy to have you today. So we have started by gathering glass out of our oven, and our oven sits at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. That means our glass is also at that temperature, and you can tell because of that beautiful glow that you're seeing on the end of that iron. That is our material there, glowing and flowing, moving like honey on the end of that iron. G. Brian makes it look easy though because he's turning the pipe. If you were to stop turning that pipe though, that glass would fall right off the end into that bucket next to that bench. But instead, by turning the glass, keep that glass on the iron, allowing us to make anything we want from it. So the first thing he'll do is center that by rolling it in a wooden scoop tool called a block. Now watch this. He's going to put a bubble into this glass. To do this, however, he will not be blowing into the back of the pipe or taking his mask off. Instead, here it goes. He's going to be pushing on a foot pedal. That foot pedal allows for an air valve to open and shut and then send compressed air into our glass via that tube that he can actuate onto the back of the iron. So the pressure for this compressed air system is only 2 psi, 2 pounds per square inch. It's kind of like whispering. That's how much air we're using. I think it's like 500 psi to fill up a tire, a car tire, something like that. So it gives you a little bit of a something to reference there. Alright, so we have a bubble. That beautiful glow has faded quite a bit, which tells us the glass is on the colder side. Cold, of course, is relative. That glass is still over 1,000 degrees and will be the entire time we're working on it. But in this colder state, the glass becomes rigid and the glass begins to set up and stop moving. That gives us some stability to then gather more glass over the top, giving us about 3 times as much glass as we had on that first gather. And so you can see how we can really build up layers here. If we wanted another gather over this, we would get 3 times as much as that glass, and so on and so forth. There we go. You're welcome. So G's got a second layer of glass over the end. Oops. He's going to cool it and shape it once again using a larger sized wooden scoop tool. Those scoop tools may go up in size, but they do not change shape. So it's the same shape. It's a nice rounded shape, kind of like a spoon. It's a great starting shape. He wants to evenly distribute that glass around that bubble. So he's pushing and pulling with that block as well as cooling and shaping. Then he'll switch to this newspaper pad, which is actually made out of newspaper. It's about 7 or 8 sheets folded up, kept wet throughout the process, and you can easily shape that. A little bit of smoke is coming from it, but when he brings his foot away, you'll notice there's steam coming away. So smoke is blue, steam is white. And that steam is what the glass actually rolls on. It's called the line and frost effect. There's the steam there. So as long as we keep that material wet, we will have the correct temperature, sort of lubrication between the two, the amount of steam, and that doesn't stick to our glass and keeps our hand cool. It's a great tool, that newspaper pad. And back into our reheating chamber. Now this chamber is at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, just like our furnace that keeps all of our glass in it. We use that to reheat the glass, to soften the glass. So he's heating this in a very particular spot, being very mindful of where the heat is located on this bubble. Watch this, he's going to go into a mold. So he's going to push the glass into that mold He's also going to inflate it ever so slightly. And then when he brings the glass out, look at that texture he gets. It is called a diamond facet texture. Give it a little length there by spinning that around and around. That elongates the bubble there. And then we can start to shape this. Now he's creasing the glass, creating a score line in the glass, and that's where we can break this free from the iron later. That score line will come in handy. Very much so, but at a later date. Well, a few moments, I should say. Same day. So he did not have enough heat after going in that cold mold at room temperature to then continue on, so he had to heat this up first. Heating the glass up can be a bit precarious though, of course, with this beautiful texture on the outside. If we overheat the glass, we will melt out that texture. G. Brian has been blowing glass for over 20 years, and he knows exactly how far he can heat this and how to stretch the glass, to shape the glass. He's going to make a lot of this look really easy. So there he's inflated it quite a bit. He's reiterating that neckline, which is important again to be able to release this from the iron. Back to that reheating chamber. You can see that we don't have a whole lot of time to work on the glass before we have to go back in and reheat it. And that's just a common part of the world we live in as glass makers. We must stop and gather more glass. I'm sorry, we must stop and heat the glass and then gather more. We're done gathering as far as the piece is concerned. George might gather some glass out, but G. Brian has enough here. Look at that, just by holding that up, we squat the form. That happened very quickly. If you ever see a glass maker holding the glass, the iron with the glass on the end, upwards like this or downwards at any time, it's because we want to change the shape. Gravity is very much one of the laws of shaping for glass. Yes. So George is going to get a little bit of glass on a blowpipe. I'm going to bring some glass over on an iron that is not hollow. And this will go onto the piece. So we want to hold the glass parallel to the floor, or else it'll either go too far on the iron or it will fall off the iron. See how this wiggles around. It's very fluid material. That little bit of glass, you can smoosh it on. That gives us an area to add the second piece, which is what George is creating now. George is creating what we call a blown foot, and he's going to add the same texture on it as what G has. Blown feet. Adding on a blown foot is one of my favorite things to watch in glass making. When I first saw glass, this was, I think, the first thing I saw someone do was add a blown foot onto the piece, and I was flabbergasted. So it's pretty cool. I was so impressed. I was so impressed that I decided that I would change my entire life and become a glass blower. So that's how cool. Not to play this up too much, but I thought this was very cool.
What were you going to school for?
How long was I? I wasn't even in school yet. Yeah, I was on my year off, and I took a year off. Yeah. Yeah, Peter. Took a year off, and then met a glass maker. I went and watched that person blow glass, and I was drawn to it. All right, so George has a bubble. He's going to do the same thing. He's going to go into that mold. G. Brian isn't doing anything. He's just waiting. But he's going to go back into that oven and heat that piece up every once in a while. It's very important because we have to maintain temperature. So we're going to keep this above 1,000 degrees at all times. If it gets below, we are going to have some trouble. It'll probably break. But it won't break this time. Very nice. So George just went into that mold. He came out just fine. He's going to start to create. Oh, it's beautiful. He's going to. Oh my gosh. So to create the foot for this, now to give you a little secret into this mold business here, a lot of times, not a lot of times, sometimes you can get stuck in the mold. That mold that we're using, those diamond facets on the inside sometimes act as grabbies, and they grab onto the glass, and then you can't pull the glass out. So the glass gets rigid, and it's kind of becomes very stiff, and you can't get the glass out of that mold at all. You have to thermally shock it, get it to break into teeny pieces, and eventually break it out. It happened to one of us recently. Maybe I should be over here to monitor this. And so, George did a really good job being able to come back out of that mold. And of course, these guys have a lot, you want this off? They have a lot of experience, so they make it look easy. I don't think these guys get stuck in the mold. The person who got stuck in the mold was me. I have a little less experience. It happens though. That's what they say. They say it happens. Wow. I guess it happens. George said it's a close one. He almost got stuck. I blame my last stick for that, George. So here we go. Here's the cool part. He's going to heat this up to where that foot is moving a lot. And G-Brad is holding that straight up perpendicular to the ground. So George is going to bring this up and let it drip and drop onto the bottom of that piece as soon as it's ready. But George wants to give this as much heat as is possible. Now watch. He'll bring this up. Originally we'd put this into our mouth and he would tell us to inflate more if we need to. But G has the foot pedal there. Wow, look at that. And then he's going to cut that bubble free. Isn't that cool? Maybe. A little bit. Some people, okay. Maybe I'm just a nerd, but that's not all too. We're going to then break this open. So we have a closed bubble, and we somehow need to get this open. And to do that, we have to break the glass to open it. It's incredible. And so if our glass at any time gets below 1,000 degrees, it can be thermally shocked and it can be broken. That's what we're going to do to this, but we're going to do it as controlled as possible. So he's making a crease in that glass. He's squeezing down a line in it. He's kind of separating that awkward cut piece. Now to get that to break, all we have to do is chill that line and thermally shock it. So to do that, he's getting a pair of shears. They're cold. They haven't touched glass at all today. And he will lightly tap that piece, and it breaks. Wow. Huh. So at that temperature, glass is rigid, so it's breakable. If you were to drop that whole piece on the ground, it would shatter. But that one area he got to release. Now we have an opening there, and we then somehow have to turn into a foot. And to do that, we need to get this into a disc. And that's what we'll do here in a second. So a lot of these are similar. They're not blown. These are made with a different tool that just squishes a gather flat like a disc. But this one, we open the bubble up, just like we will for the ball. So G took that rigid glass, he heated it up in the oven to soften it to the point where it's very movable. So he'll use the jacks. He folds the lip as he opens it there, so we kind of have double thickness. Then you can start to spread open at the foot. Look at that. The wider that goes, the kind of wider a foot we get. He wants a little bit more heat to make that a little bit more sturdy and standard. It'd be an awkward foot to just sit on that cup. If you kind of have a nice wide disc, it's a little nicer. But once again, he's being very careful not to overheat the foot and melt out any of those patterns, so the pattern, the optics of that. He also has to get this so hard that it moves, so there's definitely a play. One that takes a long time to learn. So a little centripetal force does the trick there, opens up wide, and then you can go in and open it just a bit further. Very nicely done. The two of them will work together to flatten that foot so that it does, in fact, and will be able to sit flat on the surface. And there we have a foot, a blown foot. Now this is a Venetian technique. Most of the feet we see from the 1700s, 1800s, and from Venice are done in this manner. So this is a pretty old method. Okay, so the foot's finished, the bottom half of the bowl is finished. The top half though is not, it's still connected to the iron. It's still closed. We need to open it into a bowl shape. To do that, we're going to add on a penty, and the penty is what George has right here. He's going to smooth the tip of that. He's also cooling the tip of that. Then we will bring it over. G-Run will attach it on. We'll stick, but it will not fuse to the glass. We don't want this to be a forever connection. We want this to be a for now connection. So watch this. They'll add it on. Then he needs to make sure that both irons are exactly rolling on the exact same axis. And then we will once again break the glass along that score line that he added in to release it from the iron. So a couple drops of water will thermally shock the glass, causing it to crack, and a light tap does the trick.
Wow.
What do y'all think of this so far? This is pretty cool. Let's give a big round of applause.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody. That sure is fun. All right, so we've
Cool.
disconnected. Now we have an opening there. We can see it really well in this wonderful camera view. And then we're going to start to stretch that open. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Any curiosities you might want to ask about? Okay, awesome. All right, so we're heating the front. For the rest of this, from this point on, we're going to maintain the temperature to make sure it's above 1,000 degrees. If he wants to get the glass to where it's movable, he'll just heat the one area that he wants to move, and so the rest of it won't get as hot as the entire thing was when we first started. That's okay because we're moving along, so we want those to stay in that cold, rigid state. So he'll just heat the front. And so G, with 20 years of experience, he got his start in college, just like I did. George did not. George got his start by working different glass-making jobs around the area. This area, actually, according to a very popular glass-blowing destination, or there were a lot of factories around here that George was involved with too. Look at this. He's going to fold the lip over, just like the foot. You can give that a nice double and folded look on the top.
This works.
So G. Ryan went to school actually to be an educator, and he found glass blowing. He went to Alfred University, which is about an hour away. If anybody knows this area, it's about an hour away. And he didn't switch, he actually got an education degree and a glass blowing degree. So he studied both, and then got a couple of jobs outside of college, and then came here. And he's been here with the Hot Glass Show for about 15 years. George has been doing the same. He's been blowing glass for 30 years, George has been. Of course, getting his start in the area, and he's been with the Hot Glass Show for about 20 years. So this is home for these two. So finding glass in college is more common for career choices these days, just like many career choices. However, it's not the end all. You can definitely take a class to get involved in glass making. And the more you take, the more you learn. And a job following that is also great, so you can kind of hone in a lot of skills. If any of you are able to take glassblowing classes, I highly recommend it. It's very fun. We offer them at the studio. We also offer intensive classes for weekend workshops, or for a 10-week intensive where it's 1 day a week for like 3 or 4 hours. If you're local or around the area, you can make a 30-minute drive up here. That'd be fun. So check out those opportunities. And if you aren't close to Corning, you can always check out your local glassblowing studio, especially now that you know a little bit more about glassblowing. We'll support here and there. It's also wonderful for everyone. But yeah, it's quite fun. It's a material like no other. And there are lots of opportunities around the world. We have beginning glassblowing classes that fill up. I think we have maybe 20 a year, and they fill up every time. It's so much fun. All right, so we are close to the end of this shape here. G just then got a really good heat to the point the glass was kind of wobbly. You can see as it bows against that newspaper just how much heat G. Brian really has here as he turns quickly. And that right there is a really nice shape. I think he's gonna open it a little bit more though. Get it a really nice kind of half dome curve, whatever G has up his sleeve, not sure. Leave it up to him. But you can see how it's getting kind of wobbly and wonky in that oven. It's a sign of it being blown very thin and heated very nicely. Just then he says, I need more heat. Goes back to that oven. Do you want doors? Maybe not. Okay. So we can kind of choose the angle of that bowl just by using that newspaper. Look, I love that. So you can see the cross section of it really nicely in that camera view, how even it is. To get this piece to be broken from that puntee connection, a light drop of water will do the trick. I'm gonna run and get a piece of paper or a Kleenex. All right, that's a beautiful bowl by G. Brian Jack. What do you think? So just to show you how hot the glass still is, even though it's not moving or giving off any light, a little piece of paper there dropped in the center. Immediately it catches on fire. So now this is clear glass. Clear glass gives us the option to then recycle it and put it back into our oven and reuse it. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. But first we're gonna drop it into this big bucket of water. We're going to crack it into teeny tiny pieces. But don't worry, G. Brian will make something even more beautiful with that glass tomorrow. G. Brian Jack, everybody, and George Connor, beautiful piece.